2 acres, 3 acres, etc., you're going to have that limit exhausted. Sometimes it's short. So that's what that looks like. So if you don't rebuild, you're looking at this type of money that you're entitled to. Now, second option is if you buy a replacement property, one that's already built, and that should be coming up soon, I hope. There it is. Okay. Purchase a replacement property. So what's changed is a couple of things. So the base limit still stays the same. The debris removal stays the same. You're entitled to that. Landscaping stays the same. And what changes is this thing called the extended replacement cost endorsement. Now, we have 50% in there. Some policies are 20% additional. Some are 25%. Some are 50. Some are up to even 100. So we used 50 as just a round number. So that's where we're getting the 300,000. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's additional coverage that you're able to have as long as you can prove that the damages after depreciation are greater than the base limit. So for example, if you have a loss that's measured on your dwelling at 800,000, and it is subject to depreciation for wear and tear, age, condition, obsolescence, that's going to drive the replacement cost number down. So we'll use a $50,000 number. So the replacement cost, everybody agrees, it's 800,000. 50,000 is depreciation. Now you're at 750,000. Well, that is greater, the depreciated amount greater than the base limit. So now you've unlocked the extended replacement cost endorsement, and you have up to $300,000 more to have to get. So that's really good. We find that a lot of people need it, and it is a critical component of your homeowner's claim. Now, if you have California Fair Plan or a Lloyd's of London, or even guard insurance, for example, those are surplus lines coverages. They don't often offer that extension, so you're kind of stuck with the base limit. So again, look at the policy very carefully. And by the way, I just remembered something. Whatever you do, you should have ordered, if not already, a certified copy of your policy. This is very important because if you don't have the rule book, folks, you're not in the game. It's that simple. The insurance adjuster may be citing and talking about certain conditions and definitions in the policy. And if you don't have the rule book to measure his conversation against, you're at a disadvantage. So please order a certified copy from the adjuster who's handling your case at the insurance company. And then it comes in from underwriting. And it's basically a true testament to the forms and endorsements that were available at the time of the loss when it occurred. And so that's really, really important to get that, folks. So again, the certified copy, order it. It takes a couple of weeks for it to come in, by the way. Back to the slide. Now, the next line is additional increase due to declared catastrophe. There's a couple of deluxe policies out there that offer this great endorsement, and it's in the back, couple of last pages in the back of the contract. And what it does is in a declared catastrophe, which this is, it kicks up the extended replacement cost up to 100%. So you can go from 600,000 in this case to 1.2 million. And that's a huge difference in coverage. And for those of you that have larger homes, you may need that extra coverage. So you want to look for that. Now, I will mention there's 2 companies that I know out there that do have it. I saw one recently with Safeco, and I believe CIG has that option as well. So look for that. The next line is code, otherwise known as ordinance or law. Most policies afford 10%, up to 100%, but most are 10. So that's where we got the 60,000. Now remember, the insurance company owes you for what you had 1 minute before the loss, plus the cost it's to bring it up to code. Now code is going to be different and vary from county to county, from area to area. Code are things like this, but not limited to these. Things like your fireproof decks and roofing materials, sprinklers inside the home, Title 24 energy efficient sinks, faucets and toilets, low flow toilets, things of that nature. So that's what code is. So remember, it's 2 parts. It's getting you back to what you had plus code. And the code is typically paid when incurred. So if you look at the no rebuild column, you're not entitled to it because it's mostly a reimbursed type of benefit. Same with the extended replacement cost. But if you go out and purchase a replacement cost, you are entitled to the extended replacement cost and the code. So that's the second option. The third option is if you rebuild on site. Now, everything remains the same as it does in the second column. It's just the same. So if you rebuild again, right on where you lost the home, you're going to be entitled to all these benefits. And what you give up again is the no rebuild. And the folks in my expertise and in my experience rather, being at all these firestorms, some people just pack up and leave, and they basically cash out. And I've had people I know go to San Luis Obispo and rent a bungalow on the water, and that's how they're going to live the rest of their living years. And that's okay too. So just know that if you do make that choice, you're going to give up some of the benefits. So while we're on this slide, also important to note is for those of you that have a mortgage, this is very important as well. You should call the loss draft department. It's LOS as in Sam, draft department. And that's a little department in every mortgage company, and their job and function is to take settlement checks that come in from fires, claims, flood claims, earthquakes, hell and brimstone, whatever claim you have, and to process that check. And that's their job. It comes into them. You have to fill out the protocol, and then it goes back out in drafts. And let's talk about that briefly. What I would recommend you do is notify the loss draft department if you already haven't, and let them know that the house is on the ground or that you have a claim. Because when the check comes for this dwelling and your other structure, it's going to be made out to the named insured, whether it's you or a trust or something on the policy, and the mortgage company. And what you will do is you'll sign the check off, and it's going to go over to the loss draft department. They'll take it and they're going to put it into an escrow account. And it's going to sit there until you make a decision whether you're going to either rebuild or purchase a replacement home or no rebuild. If you go to purchase a replacement property, then you pay off the note. If you rebuild on site, you're going to need that money. So it's sitting there in that escrow account. And what they'll do is as long as you filled out the protocol, they're going to need some information. And basically what they'll need is typically a signed contract by a licensed contractor for the project. And they'll also need the adjustment figures. How did those numbers come to be? And once that's met, they'll release a third. That's how it starts. That's what most of them do. And if when you exhaust that third, you'll call them back and say, hey, I'm out of that money. I need another draw of money. And then what they'll do is they'll send out representatives to make sure you're spending money on the project and you're not going to buy a new car or going to Vegas and blowing the money. Because they have what's called an insurable interest in the property. They lent you the money to buy it. So they're protecting themselves by being on that check. Now, it's important to note that they only can have an encumbrance, meaning they can only have an interest up to the amount of the outstanding note. So if you had a $800,000 settlement check and you only owe $200,000, well, the difference, the $600,000, they shouldn't hold on to. That goes to you right away. So once that check clears in escrow, then they cut you the check back to you. They can only encumber and somewhat control the outstanding note. And that's how the loss draft department works. And that's why you want to call them, find out what their protocol is. They'll usually send out a package, fill the package out. Now they're in possession of it. When that check comes in, everything's dialed up and you're being proactive, not reactive, because it takes time to set this stuff up. So again, that's how the mortgage company deals with your settlement. That's why they're on the settlement check. And there you go. So moving on to the next bucket of coverage is coverage B. Now, by the way, you've got 4 buckets of coverage. I forgot to mention this in the beginning. You have on your policies, they're listed as A, B, C, and D. That's in most policies. And A is the dwelling. B is other structures. C is your personal property. And D is your loss of use coverage. Those 4 buckets are separate They get paid separately. They get paid at separate times. And one has really nothing to do with the other, so to speak, other than the dwelling. If I remember, I'll get into how those intertwine. But for all intents and purposes, those 4 buckets are separate. So we're on bucket B, other structures. This covers anything that's detached from the main structure. Garages, workshops, detached fencing, retaining walls. There's a lot of retaining walls I saw out there that are quite damaged. And you're gonna have to do some mitigation for this winter. So just as a reminder. Walkways, driveways, patios, sprinklers, exterior lighting, pools, cabanas, anything that's detached from the main structure is considered other structures. Now we found in these wildfires that most people build a workshop or a big barn to hold their implements or their tools, etc. And so we find that typically underinsured in these categories. I have talked to some people that have called in that have increased coverages here because normally it's 10 or 20% of coverage A. That's how we got the 60,000. 10% of the 600,000 is 60,000. So if you called your agent, he should have sold you more coverage if you have big barns and other areas on the land that have these outbuildings and such. So look for that. Now, so you got a base limit there too. It's 60,000. You may have extended replacement cost if you've got this deluxe package, like I mentioned before. You also have 5% debris removal if you meet the limit of the 60,000. If it's proven that the damages are greater than 60,000 in other structures, then you're entitled to 5% for debris removal. Because the debris field is not just the dwelling, it's other structures, it's the contents of your house, it's the dwelling. So they offer this 5% on top of it as well, additional. Code upgrades is also available there. Look for that, 10%. There's it's usually 10%, so $6,000. That's how we arrived at the $69,000 figure. Now, if you rebuild your workshop or barn, what have you, you're going to have to bring it up to code. So if you've got the conduit for electricity, that's got to be brought up to code. Seismic seismic for earthquake proofing, that's code requirements as well. So that's what it pays for. And that's a simple one. So other structures is coverage B. Next slide is the personal property slide. Folks, I'm here to tell you, if you remember anything, you should remember this. Personal property, this claim can take years off your life. And the reason I say that is because it is personal. You need to basically list every single thing you lost in that house. And on average, it could be anywhere between 2,500 to almost 4,000 line items of merchandise. And it becomes very personal. It's a long, long process. It's tedious. It's hard work. But you got to do it. That's the only way you're going to get paid. Now, look, the insurance company may give you some money up front against this bucket of coverage, and they're hoping that you give up. They're hoping that you forget 20 or 30% of what you had in there. You want to count the toothpicks to thumbtacks. I mean it, because the bottom line is for you to get all your money in that bucket, you got to come up and above the base limit because it's going to be subject to depreciation. So an example would be looking at the $300,000 figure. That's 50% of the dwelling limit. Some policies are 75%, so take it's either or, but most of the time it's 75% of the dwelling. That's how you get your personal property number. And how do you get all the money? Well, basically, let's say, for example, you do an inventory and it takes a few months and you get your list down and it's 50, 60, 80 pages long of thousands of line items of stuff. And let's say the number is $500,000 worth of stuff at replacement cost. Now, it is subject to depreciation for wear and tear, age, condition, obsolescence, etc. And that's going to drive that number down. So let's just knock off 100,000. So your replacement cost is 500,000. You take away 100,000 for depreciation. Now you're at 400,000. Well, that 400,000 is greater than the base limit here in this example of 300. Home run. You just, they commit to the whole thing and they pay you all of it. If that does not happen, you're going to be married to them handing in receipts for everything you purchase so you can get your depreciation holdback money back. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And so that's a cat and mouse game that you don't want to get into. It's a losing battle. It's exhausting. It's ridiculous. Again, that's why we urge you to count every single item in there. And that's how you're going to get the numbers up. Now, look, you can be as aggressive as you like with the insurance company. Ultimately, you have to defend it. And that's the key. If it's non-defendable, they're going to punch holes in it. And then you're going to have some struggles. And also keep in mind that everything is negotiable with an insurance company. Everything, every bucket of coverage: dwelling, other structures, personal property, and loss of use. So that's why they're called adjusters. They're adjusting the numbers up and down. So back to the slide here. So your base limit of 300,000. Next to that, under that is sublimits. And sublimits are these limitations under the personal property. Things like BPP is business personal property. That's what that means. Watercraft, cash, etc. For those of you that have business personal property at home, it's going to be subject to a limit. Some policies are 1,000, some are 1,500, some are up to $5,000. Why do they do that? Well, because they want to sell you more insurance. They want you to buy a business owner's policy. And so that's why they put sublimits on this stuff. So be aware that that's going to come up if you're claiming business personal property. Cash, they limit the amount of cash, etc. So, be aware of that. Scheduled items means things like jewelry, furs, card collections, comic book collections, things that you bought extra insurance for on what's called an agreed value is called the scheduled items, and that's what they call it in our industry. And so you may have taken out scheduled items years ago. You may have forgotten. So look in your policy. On the declarations page, it'll typically show you what scheduled items you have under some forms and endorsements, and the amount of the agreed amount that you would settle for with the insurance company. So that's what the personal property bucket looks like. Now, in the red brackets, you see ACV means actual cash value. RCV is replacement cost value, and then there's depreciation. You're going to be dealing with these terms, folks, with the insurance company. And so this is part of our way of giving back to the community. It's the education we're talking about. So everything will start at replacement cost value. What does it cost today to replace your goods that you lost? No deals, no discounts, plus tax, plus delivery, plus setup, plus warranties. You may have bought a warranty on an electronic apparatus, or whatever it may be, a washer, dryer, or a computer with an extended warranty. Don't forget to add that in. That's how you drive those numbers to the proper replacement cost. So that's what the RCV is. And then the ACV, again, is the actual cash value, which represents the depreciated value of the items. So depreciation is very subjective. In California, it's not only the age of the item that's going to be taken for depreciation, it's the condition. This is critical. Because it's all negotiable, and look, the adjuster that's representing the insurance company, he doesn't know what was in your house as far as how old was it and what condition it was in. You do, that you have an intimate knowledge. So be truthful. That's very, very important. And be honest with respect to how old the items are or the condition of them. So this affects the depreciation. In the state of California, the condition issue is, here's an example of it. So I collect old tube amplifiers from the 50s and 60s. And if I were to make claims on those, I would put in the replacement cost. And then we would be talking about depreciation. Now, the adjuster is going to say, hey, man, those things are 40 from the 50s and the 60s. I'm depreciating them 90%. Well, my response to that would be, that's nice, Mr. Adjuster. However, the condition, because I'm a collector, the condition of them are in excellent condition. So no, maybe you only take 10% depreciation. So now I'm collecting 90 cents on the dollar as opposed to 10 cents on the dollar. So again, it's very negotiable. Every item on your list has a depreciation scale. So remember, condition and the age is important. Now, if you're dealing with, and most of you will be, dealing with out-of-state adjusters, and you'd be naive to think that that one adjuster is going to stay with you throughout the whole claim. Very unlikely. On average, you'll have about 7 different players, one after another. So they fly in from out of state. Many of them don't know California law. And we know this through experience. So that's why we say get a certified copy, look at it, study it, understand it. And hopefully, again, these slides will demystify it, how it applies. That's how the ACV and RCV and depreciation work. Now, how do you get depreciation back? Simple. You have to replace the item. On the next slide, you'll see a snippet down the bottom. I'll hit that first. And so for example, on line 1, if you see the little the blue bar there, it's a little snippet of what an inventory would look like. First line, women's jeans by Ryder's Vintage, bottom of the slide. It cost $100, and the cost source was at Macy's. This is very important because you need to create a narrative with the insurance company of how you shop. If you don't do that and let them know where you're sourcing your pricing, they're going to just take the cheapest thing they can find from like a directbuy.com or a direct warehouse pricing, which will probably be 20, sometimes 30% cheaper than what you should be getting paid locally because you shop locally to support your local businesses. So that is really important, that section, cost source. So the depreciation, back to this line 1 there, to the jeans is 50% in this example. So the actual cash value of the jeans, you're going to get a check for $50. And they're withholding depreciation of $50. So the way this all works is that when you replace a pair of jeans and you spend the $100 or more and you hand in the receipt to the insurance adjuster, well, they're going to give you your $50 back. That's how it works. So and can you imagine doing that? You know, ridiculous, like 1,000 times, 2,000, because as you go to replace all your items. So again, to alleviate that heartache, then you want to maximize the benefit by getting the numbers legitimately as high as you can, no deals, no discounts, minimize the depreciation by negotiating it down, and then have the depreciated number fall above the limit of your personal property. Now, common questions. Do I need to list every item? Yes, absolutely. That's how you're going to get the numbers up there. That's what you want. Look, if you want to get paid, you got to do the work. It's that simple. How do I list every item? Well, again, where was it purchased? You know, that we just talked about that. Macy's, Cost Plus, Pottery Barn, Home Depot, wherever you shop. That's that narrative. How much does it cost when it was purchased? I don't really think that's important because think about it. If they owe you replacement cost and you're a smart shopper and you bought something on sale, it's not on sale anymore. So you're going to list it at today's replacement cost. Does it matter? Yes, everything matters. When it comes to money matters, money matters. It's that simple. Number 3, what is a holdback and how does it work? Well, these are the terminologies you're going to hear. Some companies or adjusters will call it full replacement value holdback, FRV. Some will call it the depreciation holdback. Some will call it withheld depreciation. So all those 3 names all mean the same thing. It's the depreciation that they're holding back until you replace the item, then they pay you the difference back, that withheld amount. That's how that works. Next slide, we're going to talk about some tools and tips and things you want to think about. Keep a pad and pen with you at all times. Very important. Some of you are probably waking up in the middle of the night thinking about things you lost. It's just, you know, coming into your memory at that time. Reach over the nightstand, grab your pen and pad, and start writing. That's okay. That's how people do it. Draw out each room one by one. That helps you visualize the drawers, the bureaus, the closets. Don't forget the shelves and et cetera, and things inside the drawers. Don't forget what was under the bed and the dressers. Look, a lot of people undervalue the stuff they own. And I'm just going to mention that, you know, if something was not used for years and it's just stuffed in the back closet or in the garage in the back corner and it's just still there, it was there, and you never used it, it doesn't mean it doesn't have value. They owe you for what it costs to replace today. So don't undervalue your personal property. Use family and friends and let them help you research and price items. So a lot of people get a call after an event like this, and you know, a relative or a friend will say, "How can I help you?" Well, this is your chance to put them to work. Take a few pages of your personal property inventory and have them price it out. That's okay. And that'll make them feel good, and it eases the burden off of your shoulders. Photographs, documentation, and cloud storage. If you have had any parties or any events at your home and your friends have those pictures, have them send them over to you, because what you want to look at is what's in the background. It'll help jog your memory. And not only for the personal property items, but also looking at the finishes on the walls of the lighting. Did you have crown molding? You know, that kind of stuff. It'll help jog your memory. Next slide is the last and final bucket of coverage, loss of use. The blue circle ALE is the additional living expense. And the green, of course, is fair rental value. We're going to do the blue first, the ALE. The way this all works, if you have additional living expense coverage, which most of you do, you either have a dollar limit or you have a time limit. Now, for those of you that don't have a dollar limit, for example, like a State Farm policy, there's no dollar limit, but there's a time limit. Usually the policy with State Farm will say 24 months. But now, because of legislation that passed due to all the wildfires in recent history, they've extended it out to 36 months. So you have 3 years. And there's no dollar limit there. But what the important thing is of this whole loss of use bucket is that your standard of living is to remain the same. No more, no less. Again, the standard of living, your standard of living, not the insurance companies, your standard of living is to remain the same. And so if you have a 2,000 square foot house, you're entitled to a 2,000 square foot house. If you had a pool and cabana and all that, then you can find a rental with a pool and cabana with a 2,000 square foot house. That's great. When there's no dollar limit, it is what it is. It's fair, what's fair and reasonable, whatever the market bears. And so they pay for it. It covers the temporary housing, and it'll also cover the furniture rental. Now, don't go out and buy furniture, folks, because this bucket of coverage, loss of use, is a use it or lose it bucket. And don't think for 1 minute that if you try to save the insurance company money in this bucket, that they're going to pay you more in the dwelling, other structures, or personal property bucket. You're mistaken. So again, use it or lose it. It's a benefit. You bought the contract. Now it's time to get the benefits out of it. So you're going to rent the furniture for the duration of what's called the period of restoration. Now, they only owe you for the shortest period of restoration, which means the shortest amount of time it will take for you to either rebuild or permanently relocate, or like you buy another house that's already built. So the minute that happens, the loss of use stops. So in an effort to control the cost here, the insurance companies will, probably in about 12 months from now, you're going to get a call from the adjuster or a letter, and they're going to say, "Hey, what have you been doing? We want to know because even though you have 3 years, you have to move with diligence and dispatch to either relocate or rebuild, and we paid you all the money, and so you can't just sit around for 3 years and not do anything." So, and again, in an effort for them to shorten the loss of use bucket of time and money, they try to save money, they will start the clock ticking. And be aware of that. Even though you have 3 years, that's nice. But again, if you've already settled in every bucket and you've got your money, they're going to want you to move. Or they'll shut it off. And now for those of you with a mortgage, you'll be paying the mortgage and paying rent. You'll go upside down pretty quickly. Increased mileage is covered too. So, there's an app out there that I highly recommend. It's called Mile IQ. It's about $4.99 last I checked a while back, and it's worth every penny. What it does is it tracks your comings and goings. Or you can do it the old way. Just keep a little pad and pen on the dash, and every time you pull in that night, you log your mileage. Why do you want to do that? Because they owe you about 54 cents a mile for all the extra mileage you're driving because of this claim. You may be in the next town out, or 2 towns or 3 towns out. And you'd be surprised. It could add up to a few $1,000s by the end of the claim. This Mile IQ app basically it tracks your driving. And then at the end of the day, all you have to do is you swipe one way for your personal drive, like if you went food shopping, that's not really related to the fire. Or if you were up at the site, or you had to go somewhere to meet or do something because of the fire and the claim, then you swipe the other way and that logs it. And so at the end of the month, at the end of the claims process, it'll have a very nice tally of all the mileage. It's very defendable because it's right there in black and white. It's a very good app. Highly recommend it. RV, your RV boat storage, that covers loss of use. Animal boarding, for those of you with cats and dogs, it's covered. If a hotel is not, if you're still in the hotel and they don't take pets, then certainly the animals need to be boarded. That's covered until you relocate temporarily into your home. So that's how ALE works, and the additional living expenses works like this. When the adjuster asks you, well, how much do you usually spend every week to eat at home? And there's a reason they ask that. And so let's, for example, say, well, I spend $200 a week at home to feed the family. But now because I'm displaced, I'm spending $400 a week because I'm eating out more. They owe you the extra $200. That's how additional living expense works with the food while you're displaced. Okay. For those of you that are couch surfing at friends, at relatives, your friends and relatives are entitled to room and board. They will get $10.99, and that's okay. But if you're over there for a month, then they're entitled to get paid, because if they weren't there, you'd be in a hotel, and it's going to be easy to $200 to $300 when you include the room tax, parking rates, and food. So they're saving money. But anyway, again, the point is that your friends and relatives are entitled to room and board. Find out what's needed from the adjuster so that you can submit the claim, and they'll cut a check to your friend or relative. But also, again, be aware that they will 1099 that person. That covers the additional living expenses. We're going to move over to the green circle, fair rental value. Some policies out there have this language, which allows you to collect or cash out, if you will, what your home would have rented for prior to the fire with its amenities. So, for example, if you do comps on what your home would have rented for, and let's say it's $5,000 a month. I'm just using round numbers here, arbitrary. And the claim goes 10 months. Well, there's $50,000, and they pay you a check for $50,000. And you go off and you find your own housing. So that's how fair rental value works. Now, there's only a couple of companies that have this still. I know one of them is AAA, and a lot of them got rid of this benefit because people were kind of couch surfing and kind of taking advantage of the system. And so I guess that's why, but it's my speculation. But if you have fair rental value, that may work for you. And I've seen it work for some people versus having them pay the actual living expense. So you have either or. Now, if you are going to rent a temporary house, and look, it's going to take a month, sometimes 6 weeks to find something suitable for your standard of living. They will typically pay the landlord 6 months at a time or 12 months at a time. And so at the end of 12 months, you'll get a letter from the insurance company saying, hey, what have you been doing? And maybe we'll go month to month from here. That's okay, and that's fine. And so the rental of furniture will be the same way. Now, the carrier owes for the increased cost due to limited housing. Now, there's a cap on it for 10%. There were a lot of landlords really jacking up the rents years ago when firestorms really started going on every year, and there's a 10% cap, so that's good. That helps everybody out. Next slide, and then I'll be getting to Q&A very shortly. Who can represent you? The only two disciplines by law that can represent you are attorneys and public adjusters. With attorneys, you don't have a legal problem. unless they are denying the claim or that they are acting outside the four corners of the policy language, then it becomes a legal issue. That's when an attorney would come into play, and they can represent you in the negotiation of an insurance claim. Public adjusters, certainly, of course, we can. We prepare, present, and negotiate the insurance claim. We're licensed and bonded. The attorneys, again, you don't have a legal issue, you have a valuation issue. And my experience has shown that the minute the adjuster gets a notice from an attorney, what happens is the adjuster has to send it up to their legal department, and it kind of gets slowed down to a grind. So I think it's important for you to know that. And so again, those are the only two disciplines that can represent you in the negotiation of an insurance claim in the state of California. Contractors cannot. Be aware of predatory practices from contractors. I would never share my settlement information with a contractor. I want to keep them honest. I want a fair bid on my project. And if they know how much money I have, that goes right out the window. So you lose the ability to negotiate. So, and they cannot by law represent or negotiate or speak for you. It is against the law. And if the Department of Insurance catches wind of it, it's jail time for these guys. Insurance agents and brokers no longer can get involved in your claims process. Look, I get it. A lot of them are your friends and you've been doing business with them for years. But Senate Bill 488 passed back in 2017 that stopped the ability for insurance agents and brokers to get involved in the claims process. If you think about it, really, it's an inherent conflict of interest because they sell the product for the insurance company. And now they're trying to tell the insurance company to pay you more. It doesn't work. So now we're going to go into Q&A. I hope that you guys got some good information off of the slides. So let me go in here. By the way, if there's any questions beyond, like when we end the webinar, if you have questions that you want, just give us an inbound call. We are not soliciting. We cannot solicit you until the moratorium's lifted. But we can certainly take inbound calls, and we'd be happy to help in any way we can with those inbound calls. So let me go to Q&A here. Okay. First one is, this is JP in Santa Rosa. I lost my house in the Tubbs fire. I only logged in to thank you guys and tell the audience how amazing you guys were for me and all of my friends. Wow. Thanks, Joseph. That's really cool. I appreciate that. Another one is, we have partial loss of 90% of property damage and smoke damage and outbuilding destroyed. How do we get 5% for brush and trees? So the 5% is available. You don't have to unlock it at all. What you have to do is you have to basically count the trees, count the bushes. And again, look in your policy. It's under the dwelling coverage, and there'll be a sub-paragraph there called landscape. And there's some verbiage there. It'll say each tree, bush, or shrub, it'll either say we'll pay up to $500 per or up to $750 per, up to the 5%. So you don't have to qualify for it, you just have to make claim if there's damage. So that's how you get it. And I would get that right away. And if you have a good piece of land and you lost a lot of trees and bushes, and you're going to hit the limit there pretty quickly. The next question is, how does personal property loss for smoke damage work for coverage C? Well, great question. Basically, if the way to look at it is, if you have the physical loss and damage where there's smoke and soot and ash in the house, your mattresses, they're gone. That's a total loss. You should get paid for that because you can't clean and deodorize the inside of a mattress. Things like your cushions, your seat cushions on your sofa, those may be a total loss. But you can clean the fabric on the outside, but that's great. But when you sit on it and it displaces the air, the cushion displaces the air, it's going to smell like smoke. So that might be considered a total loss. So that's how you do it. You have to basically make a list. Now, if you've got smoke damage to the clothing and such, they have the right to clean it. They'll bring in a soft goods cleaning company that'll take all your bed linens, your, any soft goods, towels, all that stuff, and clothing, and they'll deodorize it, ozone it, and they go through their process. And that gets billed right to the insurance company under coverage C. I hope that answers your question. Another question is, do you have to have receipts for every single thing you lost? Great question. The answer is no. Then if that was the case, then no one in any of these wildfires anywhere in the country would ever get paid. There's no requirement. They would like it. They would like you to have a receipt because they want to see what you paid, but it has no bearing on it because it's what it costs today to replace. So the answer to that is no, you don't need receipts. But the caveat to that is when you make your list and you start citing high dollar items, you know, 2,000, 5,000, whatever you have that's high value, it's going to be subject to audit. They're going to look at that and they're going to highlight it up to the guys in the glass office, and they're going to kick it back down to the adjuster, and they're going to say, hey, Mr. Adjuster, you have to do a little more research on this thing, and let's see if we can find it cheaper somewhere. Do a little more digging. So be prepared for that. Things like artwork, things like that. Next question is, I have thousands of trees and bushes, 9 acres burnt. It says 500 per. So take your base limit of the policy, whatever the base limit in coverage A, times 5%, and that's the maximum they're on the hook for. And ask for that right away. It's a no-brainer. The adjuster can walk through a couple of acres of land if he wants, or do an aerial drone shot or what have you, or satellite view, and see that you've lost all those. I would peel that off the settlement immediately. Just get the money. That's easy. JJ again asks, what happens if the smoke smell doesn't come out when they clean? Well, then they have to replace. So what they like to do is they'll probably try to HEPA-vac the carpet. They will use deodorizing. And by the way, the ductwork, keep in mind that ductwork, the filter system in your hot air system, has to be looked at critically. If anybody in the house has asthma or any breathing ailments, you might want to consider having your insurance company bring in an environmental hygienist. And what they'll do is they'll swab the property, the inside, and send it to a lab and see if there's any toxins. So that might be something you might want to consider. So that's what happens. If it doesn't come back to your pre-loss condition, JJ, then they owe you to replace it. Next one on this same question is, what happens next? Then it's a replacement. So for example, the couch, we'll just use that. Again, they have the right to clean it first, to salvage it. And if it doesn't come back and still smells, then the argument is, then who's going to pay the cleaning, and you owe me to replace it, period. Because you're owed pre-loss condition. That's what it says in the policy. Also, I was told they have reports that say ozone is toxic. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not a chemist. I'm not a scientist. I'm an adjuster with lots of experience here. I have heard that ozone is not only maybe toxic, but destructive, where it reduces the lifespan of your item, of your clothing. So if your shirt was to last a year, maybe now last 6 months. That's a great question to ask the people that will be handling the soft goods, the ozone question. Ask them. And if they can't guarantee that it's not toxic, then you're going to make a decision on which way to go. And you're going to have a conversation with that adjuster on this. Can you refuse to have your items cleaned with certain chemicals, especially if we are chemicals? Absolutely. They have, I believe there's some companies out there that use organic type of cleaning, but my understanding is that they basically hang everything, your soft goods, your clothing and such, in a big chamber. And they ozone it in this chamber. They change the chemical compound in the air somehow, and that draws the smell of smoke out. And then from there, it goes to the cleaning process, and then it gets delivered. So these are great questions that you want to ask whomever the vendor is that the insurance company is going to bring out. You have the right to know. Absolutely. You're the consumer. Great questions, JJ. I appreciate that. I hope that answers your question. Rebecca asks, what if we don't rebuild, but buy and remodel elsewhere? How does this change our strategy? Great question. You can do that. Your benefits follow you, Rebecca, all over the country. And keep in mind that if you purchase a replacement property, you got to strip away the land value when you present it, because land value isn't part of the insurance program. So for example, if you settle on a replacement cost at $800,000, just using arbitrary numbers, and you go out and buy a replacement property for $800,000, you're going to have a problem because the land value is included in that new property you bought. So maybe the land is worth 200,000 in this new property, and now the building is only 600,000. So you're not going to qualify for the extension if it goes into that. So the strategy is to maybe buy a property that's $1 million where the land value is 200,000. Now your number is 800. That's the replacement cost value that they committed to from the insurance company, and everything's good. And so that's how that works. As far as the codes and all that, here's some scenarios I saw happen up in Santa Rosa and some in Paradise, was where someone would go out and buy a replacement property. They didn't want to rebuild on the moonscape. And so they bought the property, but the kitchens and the baths were really not quite what they had previously. So that qualifies to get paid the dollars to bring it up to your current standards. So keep in mind that's available, and that's part of your negotiation. So again, if you find a property with subpar kitchens and baths and it wasn't up to what you had, then that's part of your negotiation. I hope that answers your question. JJ writes, does everyone have 5% for biological limits? I'm not sure about the term biological. I haven't seen that in the policy. But if you're talking about the trees, bushes, and shrubs, yes, it's typically 5%. I haven't seen anything more than that. It says biological deterioration or damage, 10,000. I'm not sure who your insurance company is. And if you're looking under the dwelling section of the conditions and definitions, I haven't read biological, but biological deterioration or damage. That must be, I don't know what that is. So let me know. I mean, you're on, so let me know what that means. What bucket of coverage you're talking about. JJ writes again, can we automatically go to replacement items if you have asthma and a 93-year-old on oxygen that lives in the dwelling? That's a great question. That's a negotiation. Remember, they're going to take the path they're allowed to, whatever it takes to get you back to pre-loss condition as cheaply as possible. That's kind of the way to look at it. So if it requires maybe some test items, for example, they take a few bags of clothing out and they run it and they test it and it comes back and it still smells like smoke, or you have some kind of chemical reaction to it, then that would be enough to have an argument with the insurance company and say, look, this is now a health hazard and it's a liability to you, insurance company. So we're looking to go down the total loss arena. And that's going to be that conversation you'll have with the adjuster. Sure, look, everybody's different. Everybody's homes are different. We're all different. We all have different allergens. We all have different sensitivities to cleaning agents, to smells. So, if that's an important thing for you, then bring it up. Be proactive. I would bring it up in the conversation, JJ, early in the process. I wouldn't wait till the end. Just say, hey, how do you intend on dealing with this where I have a 93-year-old on oxygen and we've got health concerns. Let's talk about it now before we start moving stuff off the property. So that's a good one. Also, how do you determine if the walls need to be torn out, and how do you know if smoke gets in the insulation? They can do, if the soot, particulate, and ash is so heavy in the house, you can actually maybe do some exploratory, where they cut a little piece out of the wall, and they pull out some insulation and they send it to the lab and look for carbon. And that's your argument. So if it's on there, you can't clean insulation, so then you need to rip out walls. That's a whole nother conversation with them. It really depends on how bad it is. It's really a case-by-case basis. Is it possible to get smoke out of an open beam wood ceiling? Today I was asked to go visit some properties for people that have called in, and there's a lot of wood beam ceilings, a lot of tongue and groove ceilings, beautiful, but they're exposed. So how do you get the smell of smoke out? Well, maybe you ice blast it. Maybe they take a millimeter off, get it down a nice natural bare wood, and then seal it with a stain or some kind of urethane or what have you. That's typically what I've seen done, and that's a process. So that same thing with the wood beam ceilings. Your house is like a lung; it's going to expand and contract as it gets hot and cold out here in the seasons, and so that's when that smell is going to come out, JJ. So these are, again, conversations with the adjuster. There is a process in which they they ice blast it, and they just peel off a very, very, very thin layer off it down to bare wood, and then you seal it with some kind of a stain or something. I hope that answers your question. Joe writes, gotta hang up. Please refer any potential customers to me. You would like me to talk to them about my experience with Greenspan. You guys saved our lives. It's the least I can do. JP Montemayor, Medtronics in Santa Rosa. Thank you so much for the commendation. We really appreciate it. Look, we've got over 5,000 letters of commendation. If it makes sense to get involved in claims, then it makes sense. But so again, if you want to chat further, give us an inbound call, and we'll be happy to talk to you on a one-on-one and kind of deal with your specific issues directly. JJ writes, who can help us read through our policy to understand it better? We can, or any public adjuster can, for that matter. So people that have been calling in, we have a conversation, and then they send us a copy of the policy. And then once we review it, we have a conversation of what you have, what you don't have, and maybe some strategies. JJ is Nationwide is my company. It says that. Also not seeing the 5% for trees. Okay, well, JJ, if you like, tomorrow, give me an inbound call. Call my office. The number's at the bottom of the screen, and I'll be happy to have you, PDF it over, email it to me, and I'll go through it. Pretty familiar with the Nationwide policies. Look, it should be 50 to 80 pages deep. Don't just send the 3 or 4 pages. And again, any public adjuster can do this for you. JJ writes, I saw something that Mercury Insurance waived deductibles for CZU lightning complex fire. And then another post said that every insurance would waive it as a result of Gavin Newsom saying we were a state of emergency. Do you know how we can see if that is true? Ask the adjuster. Ask, it doesn't hurt. These are all conversations. Again, proactive questions you're asking. Nobody likes surprises. So I don't know of this, but it doesn't surprise me. Look, every firestorm is different. The insurance companies, what we've learned in the past, they do different things at every wildfire. It's never the same. JJ writes again, but if we don't want the ceiling to be stained, can we get it redone? Yeah, remember they owe you to pre-loss condition. So whatever it was before, then whatever it takes to get it to pre-loss. If it's not damaged to the extent, JJ, that it needs to be replaced, like it's burnt and structurally unsafe, for example, then it needs to be restored. And so whatever method you use to restore it will get it back to pre-loss condition. Can we get it redone? Answer that. Also, what are the terms of lengths of claims for smoke damages? It sounds like a process and not just one and done. Yeah, so the sequence is this. Here's what I would recommend, JJ. You're going to meet the adjuster. You're going to walk through. You're going to have a conversation. The next step is they're going to recommend a cleaning company, a vendor on their preferred vendor list, ServPro, ServiceMaster, Restoration Management. They're all out there. And have that company come out, and usually you'll be meeting with a project manager from the cleaning company. And what I would do is have them write up the estimate, the scope and the unit cost of what it is they're going to do. Then that goes over to the adjuster for approval, because what you don't want to do is sign off a work authorization to the cleaning company, and they got 15, 20 guys in there cleaning. The bill comes back, it's $50,000. You submit it to Nationwide, and Nationwide adjuster says, I never agreed to $50,000. I'll give you $40,000. That's more in line. Now you're stuck paying 10 out of your pocket. So you want to get everything approved in writing, all communication in writing. Do not text the adjusters, folks. These out-of-state adjusters, do not do that. That's a no-no. You want all communication to go into the corporate system so that you can fall back on it when they switch from one adjuster to the other adjuster to the other adjuster. That's really critically important. As far as length of time, look, it's going to take probably 4 to 6 weeks before the cleaning's kind of done. That's even if you start now, because you got to get them out there. They got to assess it. They got to come up with a price and a unit cost and scope. That has to get approved to the insurance through the insurance company. Once they give it the green light, then they schedule the cleaning. And there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of homes out here in Vacaville and Santa Cruz County that need cleaning. So they're going to be inundated. So if you want to get into the queue, get it going as fast as you can. but there's no length of time. When the house is clean and deodorized to the point where it's livable again, back to pre-loss condition, then you come back and you're done. And if it's 6 months, 4 months, 3 months, it is what it is. Rebecca writes, if we buy a different property and need it to be brought up to code, is this covered? Yeah, if you remember on slide, the dwelling slide, under replacement property or rebuild, they do. You have the right to bring it up to code, because the new replacement property may not be up to code, and so you want to capture those dollars. Again, don't assume anything. You have to have the conversation with the insurance adjuster and get them to commit that that's okay. That's a great question. JJ writes, the adjuster said no and said to figure out how I heard that about waiving the deductible. Well, you got to do some research, do some homework. Under any normal circumstance, you know, if the deductible is $2,500 and I told you spend 2 hours and I'll give you $2,500, would you do it? Of course you would. So the bottom line is do your homework and gather as much data or defendable documents you can to get it into the adjuster. And look, each insurance company is separate. They're separate for-profit businesses. And so the insurance commissioner can make recommendations out there, guys, but it's just a recommendation. It has to be law for it to be enacted. And legislation takes time. Like the 2-year to 3-year on the loss of use, that took time, but it got done after, I believe, Santa Rosa and some of these other firestorms. Look, the adjusters from the insurance company will always push back. That's their job, and to see where you go with it. And so sometimes it's a game of mental gymnastics. Be nice. You don't want to get them upset. It's patience. It's a long road. And I will say that we live in a high-tech society here in Northern California, but insurance moves really slow. So be aware of that. JJ writes, how can you ensure that we get an industrial hygienist to look at the house and do the testing? The adjuster told me that's my job. I've been doing this 20 years. That's my job. Whose job? The adjuster told me that's my job. Okay, so the way to look at this thing, and there's been some pushback, I know there has, because of these inbound calls, people are saying, hey, the adjuster said they won't pay for it. And usually it's anywhere between $1,500 to $2,500. So I just saw that, JJ, what you wrote, so I'll answer that. Look, if it doesn't warrant, for some reason, if the adjuster from out of state, and by the way, keep in mind, they don't know California law too well, a lot of these guys, so you got to kind of school them, as we have in the past. I think you got a case there. You've got elderly people in the house. You've got people that could be having breathing problems, or anybody with asthma. Those are proactive conversations you should have with the adjuster. If the adjuster says no in writing, then you may want to just say, hey, that's fine. We're going to hire one on our nickel. And look, you got to ask yourself, what's your family worth? Is your health worth $1,500 or $1,800? I know you know it should be part of the claim, and I agree with you. But and then you argue it out later so that you can get the ball rolling. You don't want that to stall the process. So the adjuster's job to check out the smoke damage, well, it's your house. It's your claim. It's your money. They're just the ones that are going to pay for it. So everything's negotiable. So the adjuster's job is to come and visit the property, assess it, make recommendations on who you may want to think about hiring, and pay for it. Remember, he's just an information gatherer. All the decisions are made at the corporate office from people that you'll never talk to, you'll never see, you'll never really talk to at all. So you have to cross your T's, dot your I's, and line up your ducks and have the narrative prepared before the visit from the insurance adjuster, if they haven't been there already. And point out the smoke damage, point out the health issues, point out your questions. That way, you're driving the bus, not them. JJ writes, who determines what pre-loss condition is? If one has more sensitive nose than others, is that what determines it? That's a great one. I had this come up a few webinars ago where, or maybe it was a phone call, where somebody was having a conversation with the adjuster, and they said this very question is, how are you going to determine smoke damage and smoke odor? Well, I'm going to go in there and just sniff around. Well, that's nice, but there's methods in doing that. They can take air samples. There's ways to measure the pollutant in the air. The environmental hygienist can maybe, it's volatile though, so it's hard to capture. It's when they take data where they swipe, they wipe and swab. That's what will show the levels of toxicity or not, and prove that there is damage there, that it needs to be cleaned. So the pre-loss condition, look, we live in it's all gray. There's no black and white, JJ. So we live in the world of theory. And so what is pre-loss condition? You're right. So if I had clothing go out and I say, let's get it clean, and it comes back and it fits the same, and it feels the same, and it smells like it should, then that's pre-loss condition in my world. It's got to come back to pre-loss condition. That's what it says. So then you get into what's the definition of pre-loss condition and who makes that determination. Again, this is your claim. This is your stuff. This is your money. They have to pay it. Either it's salvageable or it's not. And those are the adjustment processes that you're going to have. Rebecca writes, can we get the trees and shrubs coverage up front if we then turn around and sell the property and buy another place? Of course. Yeah, remember, Rebecca, it's your money, it's your claim, it's your property, it's all yours. You bought a contract of indemnity, which basically says, I'll pay you, Mr. Insurance Company, who's going to take on this risk. And if something happens, you're going to owe me the money as it's spelled out in the terms and conditions of the policy. So as long as you're operating in the four corners of the policy, you're good. So yeah, you can get that up front, and you should get it up front. As far as selling the property, look, I would not disclose to the insurance adjuster yet that, well, no, if you're going to replace it, that's fine. But if you're going to just do what's called a cash out, where you're not going to rebuild or replace anywhere, then what they do is they look at a different way of valuations. So just, it's a card game. They like to tell you, they want to see your cards, but they'll never show you theirs. So, but yeah, that answers your question as far as trees and shrubs. Yeah, those should be one of the first monies you get right away, as long as it can be substantiated. Looks like we've hit the end of the Q&A. Guys, appreciate you being on. Great questions. JJ, Rebecca, thank you. Tell your friends and neighbors about us. There's going to be webinars again on Thursday evening, and next week, I think, on Tuesday and Thursday again. And this is all about education, and this is our way of giving back to the community. I hope this was helpful. And have a good night. And again, thank you.